Okay, I think this is right. Hi, welcome to my channel. My name is Liv, I'm an independent author, and I just spent 2.5 minutes, trying to find the right lighting with my new ring light that was gifted to me. So we're hoping this is good. If not, it has other settings, I can adjust it. So I like how this looks in the viewfinder. We'll see how I feel when I'm editing it. But that's not what you're here for. You are here, you obviously clicked on this because you saw the title of this video, and today I'm going to be talking about reader pet peeves and kind of how I try to avoid them as an author. So if you didn't know, I have one currently published novel, Saving Summer, which is available on Amazon and Barnes & Noble, like online, not in stores. And my current work in progress is a sorority romance with an autistic main character. So, which I should be getting the line edits back for any day now. And then my estimated release date is gonna be like mid to late 2026. But I'll have more updates about that once I get my line edits back and go through them. My phone just lit up. I wonder if that's my editor of my line edits at like 7 p.m. No, she's on a different time zone than me. Oh. She's on a different time zone than me too, so it would not be my editor. All right, so today's video is reader pet peeves and how I try to avoid them as an author. And the very first one I listed has been, for as long as I can remember, the #1 thing that bothers me when reading or even watching a show or a movie, and it is continuity or timeline errors. And I have with me the culprit, what started this issue, this deep-rooted issue with continuity and timeline errors in a very young, single-digit age, newly double-digit age Liv. And that is her. Like, this is like the first edition. Like, this is not the Poppy edition. Like, this book has been through it. Like, when I tell you this book has been through it, the amount of times I brought the entire series between my mom's house and my dad's house in middle school, when there were less books, but still, this was my #1 comfort nostalgic reread. Even like a month after I finished reading the whole series, I was like, I need to read it again. Don't really, like, I will always have an emotional connection to this series. I don't really like it anymore. Like, it's not really a comforting reread for me now. I don't know if I just burnt myself out on it, but like, I could talk about all of my issues with this book, but it is supposed to be a silly, fun book for teen girls. So I'm not gonna go all like deep, all my issues with the series. I will just say, I have too many thoughts to get into. We're talking about continuity and timeline errors. This series has so many, and I read it so much as a kid, and I was just so frustrated every time there was one. I'm like, go back and read your own book. Not even like you're writing like fan fiction of somebody else's work. Like, no, this is your work. Like, get your timeline together. And it's why I'll probably never write a sequel or prequel that wasn't already like planned, at least like outlined before I like, I'll never write a sequel to a novel or even a prequel that wasn't like outlined and planned out to some degree. Like, I'm not gonna be one of those people who's like, oh, everybody wants a sequel to Saving Summer, so I'm gonna write one. Like, I had no plans for a sequel or a prequel or anything when I wrote that book. So I feel like nothing I produce in that universe now would be as genuine. And I feel like that might be kind of what Lisa Harrison ran into, was like, people wanted more click books. And, you know, this book was published in what, 2002, 2003? And she wanted to be more with the times and like have all these updated references. So it's like these girls like start 7th grade in 2003 and start 8th grade in 2008 with like very relevant pop culture references throughout, like as like in each like publication year. So like they start 7th grade in 2003, they end 7th grade with iPhones. And it's just, I get like wanting to have relevant pop culture references to keep the people reading, but the continuity just bothers me personally. Another book that has so many continuity errors, and this is like not even within a series, this is continuity errors within the timeline of the same exact book. It's Fried Green Tomatoes. Loved the movie, decided to read the book. There is a lot that I liked about the book, but the timeline and continuity errors just, I was getting frustrated. And it's like, it wasn't even like the beginning of the book versus the end of the book. It was like, because there was like flashbacks peppered into the book, and it was like, here's a flashback from this time. We're talking about the death of a very significant character. Here's a flashback that is dated 2 months later where that character is there. And I'm like, genuinely, what is, like, why? What is the reason? And just to show that even my favorite author of all time is not above reproach. Like, this is a book that I read as a child, or a series that I read as a child, that I still to this day will recommend to everybody, no matter your age. And that is A Series of Unfortunate Events. I believe it was book 9 that, like, when I was rereading this as an adult, like for going on like a comfort nostalgic reread of the entire series when I was in college, I found a continuity error with Violet's hair ribbon in this book. And it was either this or book 8. And I'm just like, no, that's not where you left it. Like, it's gone. The ribbon is gone. Like, and it's just so, like, it's not even like, and like, just to show, even like who I regard as like one of the greatest writers of all time is not immune to having continuity errors. And I take great care to avoid continuity errors in my own work by doing what I call the timeline outline. And I know which series I'm going to show you a timeline outline for when I like get there. It's not University Story, not Saving Summer, but ideally, but the project that I have planned for after University Story is set in the early 2000s, and so like, I don't know, like I feel like it would be a lot easier to explain my timeline system with the outline for that book. But yeah, I talked about this, I think, in my fun facts about Saving Summer with no spoilers, that I outline the timeline of my books so like specifically, like so in so much detail. I put things in my outline that will never see the light of day in the actual book, that nobody cares about, just because it just like, it's such a big thing for me personally, continuity errors, and I'm just like, I will be damned if I ever have one in my books. Because that's like my biggest thing that pisses me off. So that is how I avoid that as a writer. That will be followed up with a more detailed explanation when I eventually have a timeline outline to show y'all. The next book, or the next pet peeve I have, and I'm not gonna show y'all an example of a book for this, just because this one, I'm just, because like of the way that I'm going to talk about what is somebody else's art, I'm not gonna show you a specific example for this pet peeve, but I'm just gonna give like very general, just because like, even if I disagree with the purpose for which it was made, I don't want to like yuck somebody else's art if it does mean a lot to them, because I'm making a lot of assumptions in what I'm about to say. So without further ado, one of my other biggest pet peeves is when you can tell that the book only exists, or you can tell the story only exists because that author needed to sell a book, versus when I read a story, I want to know that book exists because the author needed to tell that story, wanted to tell that story. And that's why I will never write to market. That's not how I work. I will never like pump something out because it's what's hot right now. Like, every story I have ever written, will ever write, has significant, deep meaning to me personally. Like, everything I write exists because that is a story that I desperately wanted to tell. That was like swimming around in my mind for years, and like just the, like, not something that and like you should be able to tell it's not something that I thought up for NaNoWriMo this year because this particular trope is trending or something like that. And I feel like I can't always tell, but like sometimes I'm reading a book and I just get a very specific ick about it, and it's usually because it feels like it only exists because, like, the story only exists because the author needed to sell a book. Like, if it's too formulaic, if it's like I want to feel the author's passion for their story. Like, one of my old friends, Hunter, wrote a book. She's a fellow independent author, and her genre is not the genre that I typically read, but we're buds. So I went and bought the ebook and read it, and I just, even though like it's definitely not my genre, like I could just feel her passion for that story, and that like helped me like get through the parts that were like maybe not as interesting to me because it wasn't my preferred genre, is because just I could tell she was very passionate about that story. And so that's something that I find very important, is when I'm reading a book, I want to know that book exists because the author wanted to tell the story, not because this was a cute trope that was trending right now. And how I avoid it as a writer, I think I kind of already went over that, is I just simply do not write to market. Everything I write has deep, significant meaning to me personally. But yeah, my next pet peeve, I don't run into this as much in books as I do in like TV or movies, but I ran into it in a book this year and I want to talk about it. And this pet peeve is when the book is historical fiction and the time period that it's set in is a meme. And this kind of like, I've only seen it really happen with like more modern historical fiction, like 60s and later. So like, just when I say that the time period is a meme, what I'm looking for when I buy a historical fiction novel is, if it is set in the 1970s, I want to feel like I could have picked this book up off the shelf in the contemporary fiction section in the 1970s and just read it as it was. I don't want to feel like I'm looking at the 1970s through the eyes of somebody who knows too much situational irony, like not from a book, but like there's the episode of Glee, like the flashback episode where the principal's like, oh yeah, MySpace is going to be around forever, like we can't underestimate the significance of MySpace, knowing full well that like in 2 years nobody had a MySpace after that like flashback took place. So like, you know, like that's just an example, like that's not obviously not an example from a book, but that's like a more like, but like that's kind of what I mean, is like, if there's too much situational irony, pop culture references, if it feels like if it doesn't feel like I could have pulled the book off the shelf in the time period that it was set as a regular contemporary fiction novel and read it, I am uncomfortable. And recently I ran into that with Firefly Lane. Love this book. The first like half or maybe even like 3/4 of, because it's set across 4 different decades. You got the 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s. The first half, maybe 3/4 of the 1970s part, there is a pop culture reference every 3 seconds. Like I am not kidding. Like every time there is like any sort of dialogue that would move the story forward, there are then at least 5 references to pop culture, fashion, celebrities, historical events of the time. And it's just like, we get it. It's the 1970s. People didn't talk about 1970s pop culture this much in the 1970s, I'm pretty sure. And it doesn't feel natural. It's like clunky and it bothers me. It did get better throughout the rest of the book. But it's just like, those first chapters were rough. Like I genuinely was considering DNFing the book because I was just overwhelmed by the amount of references, and it was too memey for me. And as I mentioned previously, I am planning in the somewhat near future, like my next project after University Story is going to be a series that is set in the early 2000s. And I take great care to make sure that that book feels like you could pull it off the shelf in 2005 or 2006 and as a regular YA fiction novel and enjoy it. Like maybe like sparingly I might throw in some situational irony, but for the most part I want it to feel like you could have just picked this book up off the shelf in 2006. And I just like, when I self-edit, I go through my work and I'm like, I need to make sure like when I'm reading this, it doesn't feel memey, it feels natural to me. And, you know, when I go through beta reading for that series, when I go through developmental and line edits for that series, that's something that I'm going to be asking questions about, is does it feel like a meme, or does it feel like you could have pulled this off the shelf in the year that it was set and be fine? So So that's that on that. My last major pet peeve that I'm going to talk about is modernized editions of books. Now, I don't mean like a modern retelling of a book. I mean like you took the exact same story and just updated the pop culture references. And so I'm gonna share two examples. So this, I bought the sequel to this book when it came out when I was in college, and I got the original, when I first read this book, I got it from the library, so I'd never owned the copy, so I figured as long as I'm ordering the sequel, I might as well order the original. So this is The Earth, My Butt, and Other Big Round Things by Carolyn Mackler. I absolutely love this book. Like, it is one of my favorite books that I read in high school. And I was so excited to just dive into a nostalgic, cozy reread of it when I got the updated copy, and only to find out that the author decided to modernize it and take out the early 2000s references and give everybody social media and YouTube and all these things. And I'm like, it changes the plot for me personally, because I'm not going to give spoilers about this book, but there is a very significant portion of the plot is that there is something that the main character does not want her friends to find out about. And in like 2004, when social media was just like, here's a mirror selfie and a funny like flash video. I don't know, I was 8 in 2004. I had a Neopets, that was it. Like the social media landscape of 2004, yeah, that's feasible that like she could have hid that from her friends. But in like 2019, whenever it was that she updated this, the social media landscape of the 2010s, there's no way she would have been able to keep that a secret. Like there would have been news articles, there would have been think pieces on blogs, like her friends, like there's no way her friends would not have found out about that. And so like, I think it changes the plot, not only for like significant reasons like that, but it's just like, it's like, I don't care if a story is timeless. I bought this because I wanted a nostalgic, cozy reread of this book. I didn't want to feel like it was happening in the current time, because I remembered it for being nostalgic and cozy and set in the early 2000s, not for having modern references that I was familiar with in my everyday life. Like this was supposed to be an escape for me to simpler times. And on that very same note, this series by Lauren Miracle, this was my original copy that I bought in the 7th grade. Way too young to be reading this book, but I didn't care. Like I reread these books constantly because like they reminded me of a simpler time when I was not on social media, but when social media looked like, you know, chat rooms and like this, and there wasn't like, YouTube wasn't big yet, and like Facebook wasn't really a thing. MySpace was the thing, and it was a very different social media landscape than, you know, in later years. And I found out recently that she released modern editions of these where there are social media references and all that. I'm like, no. Like I want to escape back to a simpler time. Like that's why I have these. So I will not be updating my copies. I will not be seeking out the updated copies. I'm like, I've seen these in classroom libraries. I'm not quite sure I would put it, I'm not quite sure I would put this in my classroom library. I teach high school, but if I were to put it in my classroom library, it would be the original edition, not the modern rewrite, because like, again, setting things 10 or 20 years after they originally took place will significantly change the plot. Like I read 13 Reasons Why. I think it was published in like what, 2005, 2007. I don't know. And then they made the Netflix series, which is a whole, we have so many issues with the Netflix series here, but they brought it into modern times. And I'm like, having social media be the way it was in 2017 versus 2007 or 2005 very much changes the plot of the story and the way things would have happened. Like you can't ignore that. And there is also the flip side of that, where like when you have a show that is based on a book that was set, that was published years ago, and they keep it set in the time it was published, but then the timeline becomes a meme. And I can't think of any examples off the top of my head, but I really liked the adaptation of Looking for Alaska. Like I felt like that was very much like, I feel like I could have just turned the TV on in 2005 and that would have been on, and it wouldn't have been like, obviously there were like some like modern editions of songs in there. But like for the most part, like it felt like, you know, we were trying to keep this true to the year it was set in without making that a meme. And so I really respected that addition. So I really respected that adaptation of Looking for Alaska. Now on to how I avoid that pet peeve as an author is I simply will never modernize any of my stories. You will never see that happen from me. I respect a good like modern adaptation. Like let's take like 10 Things I Hate About You being a modern adaptation of Shakespeare's Taming of the Shrew. Like I respect that. I do not respect we're gonna take this book and just change the references to be current. Like I don't vibe with that at all. And you will never catch me doing that. That is not something I will ever do. 20 years from now, Saving Summer will still have references to the year that I published it. One of my future projects, like I feel like I've dropped it. I feel like I've mentioned it in passing so many times in my videos, but one of my future projects, I have been like outlining, writing and rewriting and like shifting my focus to and away from since 2012. And it's going to be set in 2012, okay? Like I am not re-outlining all of it to make it set in whatever year I finally end up publishing it, okay? Whatever year I started outlining those books, I am not changing any references. That's just gonna be the year it was set in, and I don't care. I don't care if it dates my book. I don't care if I genuinely don't. So yeah, that's how I avoid that one. Those are my biggest pet peeves as a reader and how I avoid them as an author. And I will see y'all next week with a new video. I do want to say thank you to all the people who are new to this channel. I have grown like 20 subscribers in the past couple of weeks, and you know, welcome. I love to have y'all here. You know, I started this as a stupid vlog channel in 2014 and privated all of that, and decided to like rebrand it as my author channel in 2021, and then promptly fell off the face of the earth until about a year and a half ago, and then I fell off the face of the earth again until this like summer. So I am planning to be more consistent with uploads and just building my author brand on here and building my channel. So thank you to all of you who are joining me here. Thank you to everybody who's bought a copy of Saving Summer in the past couple of weeks. It really means a lot. And yeah, I'm looking forward to just everything that's coming in the future. Really looking forward to getting my line edits back. If my editor's watching this, I'm sorry I'm so impatient. I really am excited to work on Violet's novel again. So, so yeah. But yeah, she can take her time, whatever. Like I will be fine. Yeah, like I will be just fine. I will find other ways to occupy my time. Like ending this video that I was probably supposed to end like 2 minutes ago and just kept rambling. So anyway, it's great to have you here. Thank you for watching. Thank you for subscribing if you're new here, and I will see y'all next week. Bye.